Hi, my name is Sally Wood for Be Inspired, and recently I was asked by a gentleman if I could redo his cushion. He wants to keep the colour, the front and the back, because it matches what they've already got in there. He also wants to keep the button. And the reason for getting rid of the side and the piping is it is just starting to fall apart like this. This is a relatively easy job. It's just really a case of unpicking the border and sewing it all together. Now the first thing I'm going to do is remove the button. So you just push down hard and pull it through. Oops, I'm going to have to do it from the other side, I think. There we are. And you can see if I pull that, there's some cords here, just like that, and I'm going to snip through them. The buttons will pull off. He wants to keep them, so I'm just going to pop them to one side, and this one seems to have gone through. Now I'll be reusing the holes, so that won't matter, and that thread kind of caught, but that will go too. So I'm going to put my scissors down there and I'm going to slice through these threads here, and slowly this should open up. I don't want to slice through the fabric, well, not the top fabric, the bottom fabric I don't really care about, because I'm not keeping the fabric underneath. If there's any awkward areas, just very carefully cut them, because you don't want to ruin any of the fabric if you can help it. And as I snip, I can snip along where this joins. This is going to be the new fold, so that's why I'm going to be very careful on this corner. I'm also going to go the other way towards the other side. Sometimes one side will be easier to do than the other. I'm aiming my scissors away from the fabric I want to keep. You could use a seam ripper if you wanted to, that's up to you. These little sharp-nosed scissors are perfect for this job today. Coming up to this edge here, and as you can see there's a row of stitches here, and then there's a row of stitches right in by that piping, and I want both of those out. I'm not going to keep any of the piping because that's trashing too. And there we go, perfect. And just carry on round. Now two things I'm going to do before I finish taking this off. This was the bottom. Actually, somebody's already done it. They've made a little V here, which I'm going to make a little bit easier to see. That tells me where the bottom is, so I'm going to be sewing round and finishing up there. The other thing is, as I'm pulling this apart, the piping and the side are coming up. So in order to save this and make sure I don't do any harm to it, I'm actually going to start cutting along this way, and it should be a lot quicker because I'm not having to be so cautious. And there we are, that's our first side gone. Pop that over there like that, pull that away like that, pop that on there, and then on this one, looking at this is where the bottom was joined, so I'm going to pull it over like that. It already has a nick for the bottom there, so I'll leave that alone, and I am going to just pull on that seam there and open it up and then carry on around. On the bottom is a chain stitch. If I could pull the chain stitch it would all come off, but on the side here it's not. So I'm just going to have to do the same as I have already done, which is to cut all the way around. I'm going to repeat this on the other 3 cushions. I also kept one of the borders so that if the buttons are ruined, like this one, I'm going to replace this, and in future they will have some fabric left over. My suggestion actually would be to change the fabric completely, because this is going to fall apart eventually. It's not a good quality one. I'm going to put these right sides together like this. I'm just going to match up the nicks to show the center, so I have to turn that one round. So I've got them right side together. The little nicks are lined up like that. I'm just going to make sure that the corners are in straight. Just fold this into the center, and I'm going to start sewing where it was folded, so it's about a quarter of the way across. Line up the raw edges. Because they're quite small cushions, I'm only going to be giving them 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to here and then up. As I go, I am going to have to pull all of these threads out so they don't get caught into the stitching, otherwise they will show. These stitch lines might show as well. There's no piping, no trim, so forward and back and then on into the corner. Just make sure the corners are lined up. Drop your needle down, lift the foot and turn. Do that on all 4 sides. Remove any stitches because you don't want that being sewn in to the new seam. It's a bit irritating having to do it, but it will give a better look. We are recycling, so it's not going to be perfect. As we come to the last corner, just work your way to the end. If you have to turn it by hand, then do so. Lift up, turn. In this case, they're only small, so I'm only going to be going a quarter of the way across. And so forward to this point, reverse them forward, and finish. Having pushed all the corners out as best I can, I'm going to start tearing this up into smaller pieces, like that, and start pushing it into the corners first as I go around. By tearing it up, you're making it more pliable. The cushions already had this stuffing in, so it had already taken a bit of its own shape. If you tear it up, you can reuse it quite easily. This is a redo job. Never turn them away, because these are the jobs that pay the bread and butter and might get you a better paying job later. And it's better than finding these in the trash or the rubbish heap. Pillow is just about as firm as I want it to be, maybe a little bit more in that corner, so just shove it as best you can. I think this first cushion is just where I want it to be. As in a previous video, I'm going to be sewing these shut, and it's a little bit awkward, so I'm going to push that under there and lower the needle into place. Pop the foot down and sew forward and back, and then keeping that in place and pushing down really hard on the stuffing, I'm going to work my way across. As I get to each pin, I'm going to pull them out like that, and hopefully both folds of the fabric will stay together. You don't want them rolling apart if you can help it, and you don't want to be sewing too close to the edge. So I usually line the sides of the folds against the inside of my foot, and it gives you about 1/4 of a centimetre or 1/8 of an inch. When you get to the end, just reverse back and forward. I've got one whole cushion finished. Trim the ends off so they're nice and neat. When you're doing more than one cushion, just make sure that they're comparable. So in a minute, so I've got this a little bit more stuffed like this. I'm going to push down on this and push down on that. This is the first one I did, and this is the second. And this is a little bit further to go. People don't want to be sitting down and they have a nice firm pillow, and then they pick up another one and it's not quite so firm. That's really not the nice thing to do.
up to the seam but not across the seam. Just double check. I think that's nearly there. As in a previous video, I'm going to be sewing these shut, and it's a little bit awkward, so I'm going to push that under there and lower the needle into place. Pop the foot down and sew forward and back. And then keeping that in place and pushing down really hard on the stuffing, I'm going to work my way across. As I get to each pin, I'm going to pull them out like that, and hopefully both folds of the fabric will stay together. You don't want them rolling apart if you can help it, and you don't want to be sewing too close to the edge. So I usually line the sides of the folds against the inside of my foot there, and it gives you about 1/4 centimetre or 1/8 of an inch. When you get to the end, just reverse back and forward. Trim the ends off so they're nice and neat.